The Google Pixel 6 is a normal $600 when new phone, and to go over all the specs would be kind of a waste of time because it doesn't actually tell the story of the used $400 Pixel 6 that I have here. Regardless, here are the specs as well as some socials. Of course, there's no sponsor for this video besides myself, and to waste less time, I'll just let you know that the links are going to be in the description below, and those do help my channel. Thank you for listening to the few seconds of that self-promotion, but now we can really talk about how the Pixel 6 is disappointing. Starting with the bugs of this phone, well, there aren't really too many bugs, but rather quirks. After all, this is generation 1 of the Tensor chip, running ultimately the software that the phone came with. No software is perfect, with Google, Apple, and even Samsung trying extra hard to make sure that their phones are buggy and just overall disappointing. I find multitasking getting stuck sometimes, and just some other glitches that would delay the use of the phone. This is Android 12, technically Android 12L, or 12.1.0, as Google calls it. I talked about how there's been software delays with the Pixel 6 Pro, and even now we're seeing delays, with it being August 9th of starting this video, and we're still with the July security patch, which normally shows up on the 5th of every month. Regardless, the phone is not immune to bugs, with Android 12 just being a mess, with the hopes that Android 13 will help smooth out most of those bugs with the lack of huge updates that it comes with. Are companies paying their software developers less, or are there just less software developers out there? Or are they lazy? Either way, you should expect some bugs on any of the Pixel phones, but once you get past that, they get fixed, or you just get used to them, the experience is just what you want. Starting with the lock screen, you get this huge clock to let you know that there's no notifications and allowing you to view the most important thing on your lock screen, besides your wallpaper. This is a feature that can be turned off, but overall it gives you a nice minimal looking lock screen besides a huge fingerprint scanner if you have that on there, or lock if you don't, because that's where it is. It isn't the best or fastest, especially with the screen protector on, but it's there. To be fair, it's similar to the Samsung ultrasonic scanners, but only if you don't think that they're that good. Still, besides patterns, pins, and passcodes, that's the only biometrics. There's no face unlock here, unfortunately. Then if you don't unlock your phone, you get the always on display. Of course, you need to toggle it on as it's not a default setting for some reason. This is even more minimal and honestly gives you everything you need, including the song that's playing. But pushing on the fingerprint scanner, we see that large 6.4-inch 1080p OLED display that's running pretty smooth. It's a 90Hz display, which is 30Hz more than the average 60Hz that most people are used to on their phone, tablet, computer, or TV. It just feels fast, but even the video that you're seeing is only at 60 frames per second if you're watching at 720p or higher, with 480p being a lower 30Hz or 30 frames per second of torture. Like I said, this is Android 12, which allows you to customize this heavily, though I chose to leave it kind of basic how I'm normally used to, and even the color coding is just stock. It's not related to my wallpaper at all. But Android 12 for Pixel gives you the boring but usable app launcher, as well as these comically large quote-unquote quick toggles. Just basic Android stuff really, so don't expect too much different from like a Samsung, Nokia, or especially a Motorola phone, besides the fact that this is almost bloat-free. There are some Google apps that you may not want, but you can disable most of them. As for Google-specific features, in the sense of like the Pixel 6, they fall into these two categories. Software availability, which, like I said before, is kind of concerning, but promised for 2 more years, or until October 24th at the least, and the camera. Now, the camera app technically can be replicated, but I cannot find any phone out there that actually ports the app over and still gets the quality that Pixel phones can produce. This is also the first Pixel series, yes, including the Pixel 6a, where I could actually recommend the video aspect, going up to 4K at 60 frames per second on the rear sensor, but being limited to a boring 1080p at 30 frames per second on the front. It is weird seeing that all 3 cameras are dramatically different in megapixel count, but it doesn't really affect the quality that much. The front is an 8 megapixel sensor, but honestly gave some hit or miss shots, either being over or underexposed. A lot of the times Realtone failed here, and honestly seemed to perform better on the Pixel 6 Pro. Then on the back we start with the 12 megapixel ultra-wide sensor, which seems to be the same one found in the Pixel 6a, at least judging by the specs. Then the main is an optically stabilized 50 megapixel camera, but just like the ultra-wide camera, it produces 12.5 megapixel shots with a 4:3 ratio. Yes, 0.5 megapixels more than advertised, at least on the ultra-wide. That also means that any of these shots that you see are going to be cropped in to 16:9 because that's the type of video that I film. When lit well, the portrait shots come out looking pretty nice, just like night shots. With that said, I don't really focus too much on either modes. Speaking of other modes, you get motion modes, which are honestly pretty gimmicky. They don't come out like you would expect and feel like what they are, phone pictures. I'll let you look at some other reviews to see the motion options because honestly, I didn't have the patience to get perfect shots for this review, which should tell you something, other than the fact that I'm lazy. Personally, I love the camera set on this phone, but I do miss the 4x telephoto sensor that's found on the Pixel 6 Pro. We do still get laser autofocus, something that is lacking on the quote cheaper Pixel 6a. But like I said, the software and camera are the main things that set a Pixel phone apart from the rest, but then we also have the hardware. This Google Tensor chip reminds me of the BMW M2 and its engine. Not the best, but nowhere near the worst. It competes with the Snapdragon 888 and Apple A15 chip, and gets third place in gaming and processing, but that's perfectly fine. The chip obviously isn't as powerful as those, but comes close or beats their predecessors. Also, beats them in price. Like I said, this phone was $400 for me, but you can do the same thing if you're okay with buying a used phone. This compares to the Samsung S21 Plus and iPhone 13, and the Pixel 6 is dramatically cheaper in both used and new pricing. So yes, this phone is obviously supposed to be worse, but it actually isn't. Now, I don't edit photos or videos on this phone, but it can. I don't really play games on this phone, but it can. I don't rely on fast charging for this phone, but it can. Does it do all of that at blazing fast speeds? No, but that's okay because it does it at reasonable speeds. Like the Google Pixel 6 Pro, which technically has the same processor and therefore the same GPU, the phone never leaves me wanting more. When I review phones, I often find myself dying to go back to my Samsung Z Fold 3, but the Pixel 6 series, besides the Pixel 6a, doesn't give me that same feeling. While the battery life isn't the best, even being a 4614 mAh cell, this isn't the worst either. Similar to the Pixel 6a, getting through the day is super easy to do, but if you like to use your phone a lot, you'll probably end up just getting the Pixel 6 Pro anyway. For me, I didn't have issues with this battery lasting through a day, though getting through 2 days seems impossible, at least without using a power saver mode. You get fast charging up to 30 watts, though I wouldn't rely on midday top-ups to help that much. You still need about 30 minutes or more of charging to get about half your battery back. Wireless charging is here and fast charging, but through Google's proprietary dock, apparently. I stopped using wireless charging a while ago out of laziness, so this wasn't really an issue for me, just like the reverse wireless charging. It's a cool trick for small stuff, or I guess emergencies, but the charging is too slow for other phones and obviously drains your battery, so why would I want to do that? Especially when you can get a really good portable charger for under $100 and be able to charge your phone like 5 or 6 times. One thing to note is that the screen is OLED with Gorilla Glass Victus on the front and blah blah blah. None of it really matters, but the fact that you have an OLED panel on this phone means that you will get pretty nice and vibrant images, as well as having a higher chance of breaking and killing that display when it is dropped, because it is a hard OLED. Think the top layer is strong glass while the display is fragile glass. Trust me on this one, if you drop your phone a lot, keep it in a case. It is IP68 dust and water resistant, and so far seems to be good with that, but just in case, I would keep it away from liquids. Because of this, but also not, we don't have a headset jack, which this is nowhere near the first Pixel, but it's the first full Pixel series line that lacks one, even in the Pixel 6a. But we still get stereo speakers. The sound is alright, but I kind of feel like the Pixel 6 Pro was a little bit louder. Now I'm going to fire off some final bits that are cool and how they would affect you. USB-C on the bottom is 3.1, so with the appropriate cable you can transfer files to and from your computer pretty quickly. Well, assuming that your computer has a decent to good SSD. You get the option of 128GB or 256GB of UFS 3.1 storage, paired with 8GB of LPDDR5 RAM, which helps with image and video processing when you take those, as well as being able to download files faster, assuming that you're using 5G ultra-wideband or Wi-Fi 6E. Which this phone supports, but the former might rely on a Verizon model. By the way, the Verizon model is the one that I got for $400, so yay depreciation, because it's actually $100 more if you buy the Verizon version. Of course, only when you're buying new. But again, I don't recommend buying a new phone. I went into this review to, 1, style my videos a little bit more realistic. Not everyone wants the latest and greatest or cares about shooting 8K video or playing Cyberpunk 2077 on their phone. They just want a phone that works, takes awesome photos, and looks nice. This is obviously my opinion, but I think that the Pixel 6 fits into those perfectly. The other reason is I wanted proof to back up myself when letting people know that you should not buy the Pixel 6a. This phone is just way better. Sure, it's bigger and heavier at 207 grams over the 178 grams on the Pixel 6a, but trust me, you'll love this phone more. Even if you want a smaller phone, I just don't think the actual negative price difference is worth getting a lower version of the Pixel 6. But hey, I've been doing these reviews for 5 years and still don't know how to form them. Regardless, this is my review of the Pixel 6 and whether or not it's worth it in 2022 or 2023. For 2022, I would say absolutely, even with the Pixel 7 on the horizon. If it is 2023, well, I'd still say yes. You should be able to find some of these in good condition for around $300, if not cheaper. If you like a bigger phone though, check out the Pixel 6 Pro. I miss using that phone. Either way, check the socials and the comments, and as always, thanks for watching.